Welcome back to Read the Book First. This week we'll be talking about the 1995 adaptation of Sense and Sensibility, as well as some other adaptations. And returning to help us break down these movies is my friend and cousin, Spencer.
Thank you for having me back.
Of course. We'll be mainly talking about the 1995 film adaptation, but we'll also, towards the end of the episode, talk about other ones that we have seen recently or in the past. But if you're interested in those, check the timestamps below that future Jenessa will figure out. The 1995 Sense and Sensibility. I think this is the second Jane Austen adaptation I ever saw. The first one was the 2005 Pride and Prejudice, which I saw on my
Mhm.
own volition as a bored 12-year-old at a summer vacation, and there was a DVD there, and I watched it, and it changed my life. Um, on random. But this one, my stepmom showed me, I think that same summer, because I was so like into this new world I had found via the 2005 Pride and Prejudice. I've watched it a few times over the last like 10 years, and I think each time I like this adaptation more and more and more. Do you remember the first time you watched
Mhm.
this one?
I don't know the exact time. I think I read Sense and Sensibility around the time I discovered Jane Austen in mid high school-ish. So that's probably when I watched the adaptation. It was definitely one that my parents were excited to watch with me. They tended to there were certain movies that they really wanted to kind of be the facilitate the introduction, shall we say, where they'd be annoyed if I watched it with someone else other than them before they were ready to show it to me. And that was one of the movies they hyped up a lot, being really good. And of course it was. And there were many things about it that I loved from the first. And there are some things, it's been a changing relationship. I still love the adaptation, to be clear, but I think the things I love about it have changed over time.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I mean, we discussed the book last week, so check out that episode. And in my rankings of Jane Austen books, this one is like mid-tier. It's not like the top, but it's not the
Yeah.
bottom. But in my rankings of
Mhm.
adaptation in general, this one is near the top and it's in always the top three at least. I think for me, spoiler to my, I guess, opinion of this movie, I think why I love this movie so much is Emma Thompson. And I obviously, as like everyone knows, she's a
Yeah.
world-renowned, award-winning actress, obviously. But this summer, I watched for the podcast the Matilda musical. And then we also did Much Ado About Nothing, which she's in the adaptation of that. And now this. So it's been a
Mhm.
real like 2 solid months of me watching Emma Thompson acting. And every time that woman is on screen, I think she's my favorite actress. Like I'm pretty confident actually saying that she's my favorite actress.
Yeah. I love her as well. There's such and just goes to her when she's on the screen. Not like in a showy sense, but like she just has this intense, fully believe her and everything she does.
Yeah, I agree. I made this kind of joke when I was talking with my guest for Much Ado About Nothing, but in the from 1990 to 2005, it seemed like every movie that was set in the British Empire had the same like 8 actors they're pulling from. And and this one is just like it's the who's who of acting in the early 90s of England at this
Mhm.
point, right? Obviously, we
Yes.
have Dame Emma Thompson, and she did write, notably, she wrote the script for this, which is even more
Mhm.
impressive each time I rewatch it. I'm just like, okay, the woman that you are, Emma Thompson. We have Hugh Grant, we have Hugh Lowry, we have Alan Rickman, we have others that I'm not even remembering that are some of the side characters. Like there's like everyone is in this movie. And also Kate Winslet.
We love Kate. She's great too. We love our
Yes,
sensibility to our sense.
yes, yeah. And she does a great job as Marianne, but it's just like you can tell she's the American in the cast. It's an all-star cast. And I think the casting is so well matched with this writing of Jane Austen. I A lot of people, and we can get into this, specific love interests don't love certain people were cast for certain male characters. And I get that if you're going for a one-for-one adaptation of the book, but with
Mhm.
this how they're written for the screenplay, I think they match the screenplay's version very well.
I agree.
I think it's really interesting how we see the Dashwoods' father dying and John promising that last wish and then immediately arguing with Fanny. And we just immediately see how John has no backbone. And I like that it's so fast because the exposition in the book does take some time.
I also love how that opening kind of introduction to both of those characters really establishes Fanny as the dominant. Have a like a vague image of what his face looks like, but he's so much just kind of the spineless, you know, doesn't have a strong will at all, completely kind of bends to the will of Fanny. And she just like talk about taking up energy on the screen. She takes all of that energy.
Absolutely. And the actress who plays Fanny, I forget her name off the top of my head, but she does such a great job at just being so easily hateable. Like,
Mhm.
and it's so hard to do that kind of character without going too big, right? Like this, obviously there's dramatic actors and dramatic characters throughout this book and this adaptation, but you don't want to go over the top because it's not a comedy with a capital C, right? And I think she
Right.
does a good job of balancing that, like, I'm gonna be the worst person you've ever met, but also a realistic worst person.
Yes.
Kate Winslet is always just so on the edge of tears throughout this, and it's so good.
Oh yeah. She
What?
totally embodies. And I think I looked it up and I think she was pretty young. Like I think she was maybe 19 or 20.
Hmm.
Which of course we can talk about the way they changed the aging of some of the characters, but I think she really believably plays that very volatile, young, kind of on the precipice of adulthood woman that Marianne is. I think she's really, really good casting.
Absolutely. And this is pre-Titanic as well. So like she's not famous, like she's very successful
Right.
before this movie, but she hasn't hit peak Kate Winslet at this moment. And it's so interesting to see her career trajectory because it goes from here, her step from here, this movie to Titanic, I can see logically. But then if you think about later on when she's in the uh Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, like the
Yeah.
jump from Sense and Sensibility Kate Winslet to that Kate Winslet is wild and like it really I really do see her range now and like I don't know there's someone in my life I can't remember who said it but who just hates Kate Winslet in this movie. I don't know who it is. One of my friends growing up. And so every time I rewatch this, I think
Hmm.
that's wild. She's great in this. I think it's because her accent's not perfect, but like it's better than mine.
Yeah, I could see your friend's reasons, but frustrating we have with her character when we're reading it that her very kind of much at times. I wonder if Kate is just acting that out a little too well. I know when I was watching it with my husband Connell, he would just look at me every so often and be like, "Why is she being so annoying?" It's like, well, sometimes that level of emotion is, I don't know. What do you think?
I think Marianne in this adaptation, I think, is very well balanced with how emotionally detached Emma Thompson, especially in the first half of this, is playing Eleanor. Like when we see Eleanor, she is all business, no emotion. She's like, guys, I need to figure out how we're gonna make
Mhm.
money because our dad's gone. And guess what? I'm the oldest, and I have to do this because our brother's wife is the worst. So I'm gonna get this done. Like she's so emotionally detached, and I think yes, Marianne is a bit annoying at first, but I think between the two sisters, it makes sense. And I do think Marianne, she doesn't like settle down all the way towards the end, but we do see the acting gets a little bit like, not that she's dimmed, it's just, it's more a regulated emotion than at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a journey. Um, and I think cinematically, it makes sense to really try to foreground those qualities of both sisters somewhat
Hmm.
differently. Like, Austen can't give us the sobs and the sad looks and the eyes filled with tears and the tone of her voice in quite the same way as the film can. So I'm with you.
Another thing I always notice at the beginning of this movie, as we're meeting the Dashwoods, is the tree house. The tree house that Margaret has is the coolest tree house.
Make Margaret a much more dynamic character.
Hmm.
I've taken courses on Austen. I have a professor who would always comment on how Austen seems to hate children, and they're either just kind of a barely a mention, like Margaret, or they're actively kind of little antagonists, and the children are kind of these little menaces. And regardless of what Austen herself felt about children. I do like how Ang Lee in the movie makes Margaret. He takes her away from the margins and makes her more one of the sisters. Because so often it's like, oh, the sisters, Eleanor and Marianne. It's like, well, what about
Hmm.
Margaret? She's here too, somewhere.
Yeah, and we didn't really necessarily talk about this, but this is one of the reasons why Eleanor is so gung-ho at making sure everything is okay. It's not just that it's her and her sister's livelihood and their mom. They have a younger sister who is not of marrying age, right? Like her and her sister can get married and then they can go on and have some sort of life with a different source of income, ideally. But Margaret has, in the
Mhm.
best world, 10 years, right? And so I think seeing the fun of Margaret really grounds Eleanor's decision to be so detached.
She also, talk about balancing and kind of creating the family balance and translating that to the screen. I think Margaret plays an important role in that because you never really lose her. She's always there and she's always participating,
Hmm.
um, which really rounds out the Dashwood family.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm gonna look up her name. The lady who plays the mom, Gemma Jones,
Oh, that's
who, hmm
yeah, Gemma Jones and
hmm
Bridget Jones's mother. Were you going to say
yes,
that?
yeah, I
Yep,
love,
that's
and
what I
again,
remember.
it's the pool of those core British actors. They're like, what if we put you in every Austen or Shakespearean thing in these 10 years? And they're like, okay. And she plays a
Yeah, I
great
mean,
Austen
if
heroine
you have,
mom.
yeah, she's memorable.
Hmm.
Um, And honestly, Bridget Jones, that would have been, was that
Yeah, Bridget
after
Jones is
Sense and
like
Sensibility?
2003 or four or five, right in there.
Okay. Yeah. I think she brings maybe a slightly similar energy to both roles. I mean, the dial is way turned up for Bridget Jones's mother in the movie because of
Hmm.
course she's supposed to be kind of the Mrs. Bennet, the like meddlesome and like, has no filter. But there are moments when she's playing Mrs. Dash and how, that similarity that we talked about between her and Marianne both being more sensibility inclined, more inclined to indulge in their emotions. And I think
Hmm.
Gemma Jones really leans into that when
Yeah,
she's performing as Mrs. Dashwood too.
yeah. Yeah, I think the casting of all the Dashwoods is excellent, and I think they play well off each other and they're balanced in their choices. And like I think that's one of the things about this movie that I really appreciate is how centered on the Dashwoods it is. And like obviously the book is as well, but there's so many times where it's just Dashwoods on screen and then occasionally a man will come in or occasionally one of the other female characters. But it's like you're gonna have two Dashwoods on screen most of the time. And
Mhm.
I really like that. I think it really centers the story about this sisterhood and this family's struggle and less on the romance of it. Even though they do try to push the romance boundaries, they don't let it overtake the actual like themes of the story they're adapting.
You're so right. And you know what? The unlikely connection I'm making right now. it being about sisterhood. It's like Frozen.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
like Anna and Elsa, right? You have, I guess Elsa would be Eleanor,
Yes. Is Frozen a Sense and Sensibility adaptation?
right?
The answer is yes.
Oh my goodness, yes.
This is a paper I would like to read and write. And it makes
Yes.
sense too with the
Yes.
Hans versus Kristoff of it all.
Yes. That's so true. Hans is totally a Willoughby.
Hmm.
Kristoff,
It's just
yes. I guess
yeah.
it's a little bit of character flipping, but that's
Yeah.
fine. Of course, Anna's, the idealistic,
Hmm.
very like driven by her heart, like Marianne. She undergoes a serious illness, and
Yep.
has to be revived. And who her? Power of love. Oh yeah,
Hmm.
we could totally do this.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you for indulging my tangent.
I love it. I will be thinking about this for a while. Edward Ferrars. We have the wonderful Hugh Grant, young Hugh Grant, with the highest collar I have ever seen. Hugh Grant in this movie is some of the most controversial casting in an Austen movie that many hardcore Austen fans have. And if you going straight from the
Really?
pages, yes, people think he is too charming and too suave to be Edward Ferrars because Edward Ferrars is a little bit more reserved. He is more on the sense side than the sensibility side. Um, but I love Hugh Grant in general, but I love him as Edward Ferrars, and Emma Thompson has talked many times that she wrote this version of Edward Ferrars for Hugh Grant. And I think that's the
Mm,
reason why it works for me is because she knows she wrote this with his like cadence in mind, his goofiness and his ability to flip flop from being very serious and blunt to being a goofy person playing imaginary with a child.
yeah, I totally agree about yeah. The casting of Hugh Grant I also really like, and that behind the scenes Emma Thompson writing that for him makes total sense. Um and I think maybe this is also part of like hitting the cinematic register and seen as kind of a an appropriate endearing behavior, and the novel might if you took that exact Edward and put him into the movie, it might not connect with audiences the same way. And so I think if there were any liberties taken, which I don't really think there were, I think maybe he's a little bit goofier at times, but he never seems too suave to me. But even if there were to be some slight adjustments made, I think for, translating it to a film for people, for a modern audience, I think that's totally justified. And the spirit of Edward, I think, is very captured by Hugh Grant.
I agree. And I think Emma Thompson knows, like, the fact that she wrote this with him in mind and, like, specifically, like, of all the casting, that's the one that she had the most in her head was for him. And I think it works so well because she knows how he's going to act it out so she can balance on her half of their relationship on screen. And what I love about this adaptation is we get that little montage of Eleanor and Edward just spending time together. We don't get much of what they're talking about or any like extreme tension, but we see it happen quickly. Or so like, okay, you've spent days because in the book, it's very tough at the beginning for me to really see the validity to their emotions. Besides the fact that everyone's saying, Eleanor, you like him, huh? Right? Like that's we have to go with everyone else's gut. Whereas in this adaptation, we see them hanging out, hanging out with Margaret, like going on walks, and I really like that.
There's some beautiful moments of romantic tension between the two of them. Like the scene that I think of is when they're still at Norland and Marianne's playing the piano and Eleanor's watching her. And then you realize that Edward is watching Eleanor, watching Marianne, which is like so many layers of watching, because of course you as the audience are also watching. But it's such a like married by beautiful kind of triangulation of the characters and really establishes that connection between what Edward feels for Eleanor. Um, yeah, it's a beautiful montage.
Yeah. I also like in this montage, we see Fanny's distaste of the Dashwoods grow, but we also see the Dashwoods' mom, her annoyance with Fanny, not just like the whole fact they're getting evicted from their house, but like the mom is noticing how Fanny is treating the girls and she doesn't like that. And I really like that there is a sense of defense that the eldest Mrs. Dashwood, the mother, has there. Like, yes, she is emotional. Yes, she has that more
Yeah.
sensibility, but she's not for lack of a better word, a vacant mom that we see in other Austen moms, specifically Miss Bennet, Walls. Um,
Hmm.
like, yes, she wants her daughters to have big romantic adventures, but she's also like, my my stepdaughter-in-law or whatever Fanny's relation to her is being rude to my girls. Let's leave because we can have a better time elsewhere.
Yeah, there's a real sense of her being an advocate for her daughters, which, like, I think speaks to just how into marriageability was during the period, and that's reflected in the novels.
Hmm.
That, they are definitely there's that delicate are an encumbrance, and once they're married off, like she'll have more flexibility. And beneath all of this, I'm sure would be feeling some sense of obligation to their mother that both of them are of marriageable age, but have not yet, been a sense of there being any resentment or anything from Mrs. Dashwood. She really just wants them to find love, rather than just get them out of the house as quickly as possible so she doesn't have them as a financial drain.
Yeah. So they move into what's supposed to be a smaller cottage. The house that is on screen is still a huge piece of real estate.
Mhm.
It's slightly less fancy than the first location, but it's still quite fancy. That was like, that's the one thing where you watching this. I was like, that's not a cottage.
It is rustic, whatever that means.
I love how cartoonish Sir John and Mrs. Jennings are immediately. They're over the top. Like any character is going to be over the top in this movie. It needs to be them because that's like the whole humor and tongue-in-cheekness of Austen in the books. A lot of it is pointed towards them as characters. And I really like the actors
Yep.
pushing those lines.
Characters that are meant to kind of provide flavor for scenes and maybe move on the plot, but not like be deep psychological studies in the way that our main characters are, that have much
Hmm.
more complex motivations and desires and kind of that fully roundedness as a character.
Yeah. And at one point, Margaret says, I like her. She talks about things, in reference to Mrs. Jennings. And again, like they're using the Margaret character for more like comedic bits, but also like pointing stuff out. Like, and I like the kid would like the goofy cartoon character lady that's suddenly in their life, you know?
Yeah, Emma Thompson really, with the screenplay, I think she noticed Margaret's potential for that in the novel, the few little bits that Austen gives us, like of course the memorable scene with Eleanor's his last name starts with an F, and of course
Hmm.
that's Margaret's, reveal. So she picks up on that and humor or to kind of comment on situations in a way that like the more well-bred adults wouldn't. I think that's just another kind of sign of what a brilliant screenplay it is.
I agree. While they're at the cottage, we meet Colonel Brandon, played by Alan Rickman, which is such an, I mean, it makes sense as far as like an older like character who is reserved and has like some sort of dignified aura around him. But it's such a like it's interesting because
Mhm.
before this movie, most of Alan Rickman's characters and that he's portrayed have been like nefarious or villains. Like he has like that vibe up until this moment. This is the first time he's playing a more romantic lead, at least in a major movie. And I think it's
Yeah.
an interesting pick to have him against Kate Winslet because there's a 29-year age gap between them, the actors.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and like
Yeah.
as far as like, because at this point, Emma Thompson is, when they're filming this, she's 36. So she's a lot older than what we suspect would be 19-ish, right? But she's supposed to be on the edge of spinsterhood, so it's fine, right? Emma Thompson's gorgeous. Uh, Hugh Grant is still like probably, I think he's in his early 30s as well, but that's again fine for the Edward Ferrars character. But I do not believe that Colonel Brandon, played by Alan Rickman, is younger than 38 when he's supposed to be 35, I believe.
Yeah, I think all rheumatism and how old Alan Rickman seems really old in this, but compared to Marianne, I feel like those kind of comments, if they were in the screenplay, which I don't think they are, I don't think Emma Thompson includes that part, but that I feel like that would make sense. He does, my opinion is I really think he does a good job with that role and making him seem ardent and endearing, but at the same time, the age gap, it is a little icky. I
Yeah.
think if they had made Marianne, closer, like if they had cast someone clone, like that would be a little more that kind of differentiation makes it just not fully work.
Yeah, the age gap is icky. And we talked about that a lot in the our book episode. It's written
Mhm.
icky. And so
Yeah,
adapting it, it's hard because like you can't change Colonel Brandon to be young. Right. They did make Marianne, we can assume she's over 18. At least Kate Winslet was 19,
yeah.
so at least in that way, it's slightly less icky. Still a bit icky. But I do
Mhm.
agree that
Yeah.
Alan Rickman's acting is superb. I mean, he's an amazing actor. Like we all obviously know him for many movies after
Mhm.
1995. Besides him being so much
Mhm.
older than what Colonel Brandon's supposed to be at this point, I think he does a good job. I do think him and Kate Winslet's relationship on screen is odd towards the later part. At the beginning when we first meet him and she's like so disinterested in him, that is believable. You know?
Yes.
But so I have a similar thing that I do in the book. So maybe this points it to being a faithful adaptation, is that I still don't believe the Marianne and Colonel Brandon love situation here.
Submitting to a future with him rather than like having a like not making a choice guided by love and passion. It's like this is a man who will take care of me. I won't have to worry about, I won't have to want for anything. I won't be a financial burden to anyone. And they suggested at the end, but it feels like kind of thin. Like there's not a lot there to their relationship. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of ourselves a little bit with that, but
They're at the cottage, and this is where we get the Margaret and Marianne in the rain walk, and then it's a lot more dramatic in the book, I feel like, but in this adaptation, she just kind of falls. Marianne barely falls, and she's stuck there, and then a man comes over, picks her up, and takes her back to the cottage. And we have Willoughby, played by Greg Weiss, who actually did pick up Kate Winslet a few times. And they had to film that, some little fun facts. They had to film that so many times that Kate Winslet began to get hypothermia like reactions. It was really
wow.
a rainy side. Yeah, they were in rainy England, so they used what nature gave them.
Wow. Yeah.
I really like Greg Weiss as Willoughby here. I think he does a great job. I think he is charming. I think there's some mischievous, like there's mischief behind his eyes right at the beginning. You just know this guy has some red flags right away, you know?
Yeah, convincing show of interest in Marianne's interest to the point where like you kind of wonder like maybe he is a little sincere, maybe he really does love all these things. I feel like kind of getting to our conversation we had about Willoughby in the last episode, I out and out villain here. Like he makes some bad choices and he is not taking responsibility for his actions, but I think that there's his affection for Marianne is sincere. Maybe even some of their interests are similar, and they do enjoy each other's company. It's not completely unnoble. Is that a word? Ignoble of her. But yeah, I think that that leans into that kind of ambivalence where
Yeah.
he's not purely he has red flags, but he's not like, oh, girl, run away as fast as you can from the very first.
I agree. Like there's a charm to him. There is some like authenticity to his feelings for Marianne. And I think part of that is the way they film their interactions. We don't see all their conversations in like that little montage they get. We do hear them read sonnets to each other. Um, but there is like we see them interact and it seems more like we're peeping in on something we shouldn't be seeing, which kind of
Yeah.
improves that relationship, which is like more of how the family sees it too, right? Like the hair lock a little bit,
Hmm.
like we shouldn't be seeing this, but we're seeing it.
Yeah, that really strong intimacy.
Another little fun fact I'm trying not to say all my fun facts till the end. But when Willoughby gives the bouquet to Marianne when she's recovering, they that was the first thing they ever filmed with Greg Weiss for the movie. That was the first scene they filmed. And also he really did surprise them with that bouquet. He did between takes go and pick wildflowers from wherever they were on location and made that bouquet. And I'm sure he had some help with some set person, but like it wasn't a planned thing. And I thought that was really sweet.
That is really sweet. And if we were to like give Willoughby any credit as like actually as, kind of method acting, like, well, Willoughby clearly just went out in the field and got her some flowers, so I'll just do the same thing. Like he's kind of entering into that sort of spontaneous spirit of the character. I love that.
We're seeing this tension about like everyone's like kind of like, oh, Colonel Brandon, you don't have Marianne's attention. Oh, look at the young love over there. Like we have that kind of like love triangle getting set up. And then we have this scene where they are going to go to picnic, but then Colonel Brandon has to run away dramatically and the party kind of breaks apart, right? And Willoughby has to rush to town.
Hmm.
And I think how fast that happens is so good for the pacing of this movie. Sense and Sensibility, like, I mean, with a lot of Austen's books, the pacing is slower because it is people in rooms talking to each other about people in other rooms. Like, to be kind of like blunt and rude about it. As a fan, I'm saying this. I love the books, but that is what the books are, for the most part.
Yep.
And so a lot of adaptations, they either try to make it more dramatic and like crazy drama, you'll never guess. They try to make it into a Bronte book, is what they're trying to do. Or they don't figure out the
Mm.
weird pacing. Because like the pacing of an Austen novel into a movie is tough, right? And I think this movie does a great job of it because it takes its time as we meet the
Oh yeah.
characters and the relationships are building. So it takes its time. We get to see all these relationships build and they build on top of each other, which adds to the tension. And then it breaks it with this scene, and then we start again. And that mimics what Austen does, but in a film's version of what she's doing. And I think it works really, really well in this adaptation.
Yeah, I agree. I think like you were saying, the like giving us more kind of slowing down the pace at the beginning to get to know the characters, and then as we go and as things progress, and the kind of pace of the movie movie picking up. I think also that things are a little bit more kind of moving along slowly in the beginning, and then as they, and more dramatic, we have more kind of quick cuts from event to event and from scene to scene.
In general, the pacing's really well. And like other adaptations of Jane Austen, and specifically the miniseries. Miniseries are tough in general, but specifically with Austen because the pacing is so weird. It's not episodic. It's been a while since I've seen some of the Sense and Sensibility miniseries, but they do seem to drag a bit. And I think that's what deters a lot of people from trying to watch a lot of adaptations is the dragging of a miniseries, which I get. I think specifically in this part of this movie, it does a great job because when the party is breaking because of the drama of Colonel Brandon and the drama that we have yet to find out about Willoughby, we meet Lucy and Anne. So they're here at this point. We get the weird awkwardness of Lucy telling Eleanor about um her sister-in-law, asking her about a sister-in-law, and Emma Thompson is amazing in that like weird scene with Lucy. And then Lucy is going with them to London, so it's even an awkward situation there. Like I think they do it's such a smart way of adding the Lucy drama to it.
I think Lucy, but the actor that plays Lucy, I think she perfectly captures that like kind that that girl that you don't know very well, but you're kind of awkwardly put in the same room as, and she thinks you're better friends than you are. And you want to be nice to her because you don't want to be rude, but also like you don't want to encourage her to lean into your business. I feel like she just perfectly captures that type of person. That character was written was really brilliant that way.
I agree. I really 100% agree. She is exactly that person. But I would add, I think this Lucy knows that Eleanor and Edward had a fling of some sort, whatever that means. But I think it's both that she's like awkwardly being
Yeah.
that person, but I think she's playing it like she knows.
Yeah, you can see that there's something. She's certainly not naive, just like, oh, look, a friend, someone I can confide to. She definitely figuring out what precisely their relationship was. And like you can see it, her trying to kind of read Eleanor in those scenes where she's kind of testing out to see like what her reaction will be to whatever news or whatever she's about to share regarding Edward.
Yeah, absolutely. In London, again, with the pacing, I'm glad they sped up the pacing with the London bits. It's more of like, oh, we're going to a ball. Oh, Colonel Brandon's asking about Marianne. Oh, Robert Ferris is here and dancing with Eleanor, and it's awkward, which I love. I love that we meet him and get the
Yes.
brother. Um, I also like when the Dashwoods leave because Marianne is distraught over Willoughby. I love that Lucy's like, I'll dance with Robert. Like it makes more sense that we just see that for a second so that later on what ends up happening is believable.
Yes, I agree.
What do you think of Marianne almost fainting?
I think that she could have a moment just with Kate Winslet's superior acting, just acting, just showing that like horror and despair on her face. It felt, like the swoon is kind of an overdone thing. Like it is in a lot of novels, but it's also kind of something that feels a little bit tired. It's like, oh, of course, lady in distress and she swoons. It's like, I don't know if we need to write in a swoon where there wasn't a swoon to begin with. And I don't think there
Mhm.
was. She doesn't almost faint in the novel, does she?
I
Yeah.
I don't remember. But yeah, I agree. I think when we have Kate Winslet here, who can probably cry if you just ask her to, let her do that. You know,
Mhm.
the she doesn't need to overact in this way. I agree. The only time I want to see a woman faint in a movie is if it's Elizabeth Swann pretending to faint to distract pirates.
Yes, because then it's moving along the plot.
Yes, yes. We get the letter from Willoughby as he breaks up with Marianne and gives her the hair. We get the confirmation that there's no engagement. And I love that Mrs. Jennings defends Marianne here. And we get that in the book, but like it's so much more meaningful in the movie. And I think it's because we see Miss Jennings be over the top silly that now she's like over the top serious. And I like that a
Hmm.
lot. Colonel Brandon tells Eleanor the full story and like confirms that Willoughby loved Marianne in a way.
Yeah.
I think this is the most like besides, the adapting this for the screen, this is the most they change something because in the book we're definitely led to like not forgive Willoughby at all, right? But in the movie, even Colonel Brandon's like, he was in love. He's young and dumb, but he had to go fix other dumb mistakes first.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I wonder why that decision might have been made. Make us a little more kind of win us over to Colonel Brandon or win him over to us rather, that he's not just this stodgy old guy that's trying to like get the really young woman, but rather he's someone who he understands youth. Like he understands kind of the impetuousness of Willoughby. Do you think that maybe that's supposed to make us sympathize with him?
I think we're supposed to sympathize for with him a little bit more. And I wonder if this was originally in the script or a rewrite because Emma Thompson before before this was filming, she was married to Kenneth Branagh. Um, but before she started filming this, they were going through some arguments because it then came out while they were filming this that Kenneth Branagh had cheated on Emma Thompson with Helen Bohem Carter. Big British acting drama. And Emma Thompson has talked about how this movie
Mhm.
essentially saved her from her depression, partially because of the work of focusing on her writing, focusing on acting, but also Greg Wise. Her and Greg Wise ended up after this wrapped, ended up started dating, and like she like slowly fell in love with him, the actor who plays Willoughby. And so, yeah, which I think is so interesting. And they're still together today.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
Yeah, they had a kid in like 2002 or 3 and or no, and like a couple years later they had a kid and then they got married in 2003 and then they ended up adopting another kid and they're still married today. Which I love that for Emma Thompson, especially seeing her like because I just watched Much Ado About Nothing, which is her and Kenneth Branagh as the romantic leads, and they're married at that time. To this, where she's heartbroken, and by the end of the filming this, she's kind of come back to life through all this heartbreak, which I think, especially what the scenes coming up, you can tell she has something to pull on that's fresh. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so, I mean, I don't know if it's originally in the script or a rewrite, if they're like, hey, let's make Willoughby a little bit less awful,
Hmm.
Like, but also, this Willoughby, like we said earlier, we don't see him as much as a villain. He made bad mistakes and he's not good at accountability. Whereas in the book, we have way less grace for him. And I don't know if that's because of the acting, because of the writing, a mixture of both.
Yeah. It's interesting to speculate. Yeah. I think there's something about Greg Wise just as an actor, like it's just hard to like fully hate him. Like even knowing like what his character did. Um, which I guess maybe is another part of just adapting a novel to the screen that translating a character from the page to the screen, like there will be some level of connection that people are able to make with a, performance rather than reading a character on a page. Maybe asks us to look at the character differently. And especially if it's well acted, like Willoughby is in the film.
Hmm. Yeah. It's so interesting. And like, also, Colonel Brandon, the one saying like Colonel Brandon believing that Willoughby did have some sort of love for Marianne, I think also endears us to Colonel Brandon a bit more, right? Because he's so, I want to use the word obsessed in like the creepy way, but he is so focused on Marianne that he even notices how other people notice her or relate to her, right? And I think
Mhm.
that is the most redeeming quality to Colonel Brandon and then Marianne's relationship, I think, is that part of it. I still think it's a little icky,
Yeah.
but I'm okay-ish with that.
Yeah, I see. I get what you're saying. I agree, and I think what is happening in effect with both Willoughby and Colonel Brandon is that we're led to like the characters a little bit more because of that change that was made.
Mhm.
So we're connecting more to both of them as viewers.
Yeah. At 1 hour and 34 minutes, Lucy is wearing the most bonkers hat I have ever seen.
Oh my goodness. The bonnets in
Yes.
this movie. I mean, I remember the one you're talking about, the ones that really stood out to me were Mrs. Dashwood, aka the mother of the girls, of the daughters. She wore the like biggest bonnets, and they were like morning bonnets. You know, she's wearing her black because of course her husband just died, which like R.I.P., sir. Like of course you mourn your husband, but like the hats, like why are they so big? What's inside?
The hats in this movie, and like I know we talked about the collar briefly, with Hugh
Yeah.
Grant's collar, but the hats are so bonkers that my review of this on Letterboxd, time I watched it, I said sense and not so sensible hats is what I said. But like Lucy's hat in this scene is just so bonkers, which adds to the bonkersness of the scene. So we have Lucy and Eleanor are chilling awkwardly in this room, library, whatever room it is, lounge, I forget the room, foyer, whatever, fancy
Hmm.
British words. And Edward comes in to come and like declare his like love or apologize to or explain stuff to Eleanor. And Eleanor is like, behind you, look behind you. And then he's like, oh, Lucy, I didn't know you're here. And I love the awkwardness. I love the tension it builds. I love how we see how Edward's genuine feelings here. And it's for us it's so obvious, but at the moment Eleanor's still denying her feelings, you know?
Hmm.
And I think this scene is so brilliantly like set up and filmed. It's so good. And the hat adds to the drama.
It does. The hat is acting in addition to all of the actors.
The paid actor
And
hat.
yes. Yeah, the tension and the awkwardness are just so palpable and so real in that scene. I think that's one of the reasons why Hugh Grant's casting is so brilliant. Like he does like awkward like no one else. And he brings that to so many of his roles. Like it seems like almost every performance there's one scene where there's like a palpably awkward dynamic, but it's not awkward in a like, oh, I need to like close my eyes and turn off the TV because I can't bear
Hmm.
it. Like he brings a kind of charm to it as well, where you can like see yourself in that maybe a little bit. Like we've all been in situations where there's an elephant in the room and you know, no one's talking about it. There's something that's unsaid, something that's unexpected, and it made things weird. Um, I feel like that's one part of the magnetism of Hugh Grant and part of what makes him perfect. Like I think, you know, the scene like exemplifies what kind of the strengths of his character for the film as a whole are doing. Um, yeah, it's brilliant.
I agree. The next scene is also so great because it's when Fanny finds out about the secret engagement and like there's this like slow pan and a whisper and she's like freaking out and I think it's so good to see that. So Eleanor and Marianne have this big argument conversation about Edward, but really like love, feelings, etc. And
Mhm.
with the context of where Emma Thompson was in her life at this moment, I think this is some of her best work. It is so raw and so
Mm.
good. Early 90s Emma Thompson was somewhere else because just like she is finally, she wasn't really in many movies until like Henry the Four, Henry the Fifth was her first like big movie. Um,
Hmm.
and then she was in Much Ado About Nothing, some other ones between then. And then she was in Howard's End, which she won an Oscar for the year before this.
Yeah, love Howard's End. She's so good in that.
So good. And then she's in this the next year after she had spent 3 years writing this script and editing this script.
Wow.
And it's just like this scene is just obviously plot wise very important, thematically very important, but like in the context of just Emma Thompson, so cool and amazing that she got to this point and knowing that there's a happily ever after for her. I like love that we get to see her in this
Mm,
moment as well as Eleanor in the moment.
I agree. It's such an important moment for Eleanor to finally uh be authentic with Marianne. Um, and when I wrote my undergraduate thesis, I feel like this was kind of one of the missing pieces in the novel, something that really was able to be communicated via the screen, but something that the dialogue of the novel that I don't think it ever fully facilitated, that level of kind of mutual understanding that we have finally in that sequence between where they're both kind of truly seeing and understanding each other. It really provides an important catharsis for their relationship.
Absolutely. And it's especially like it's so good and within the pacing of the movie and how the 3 or 4 scenes before this are also giving a lot of very important plot points and also character relationship, breaking or
Mhm.
getting fixed. Like I think it's just very smart. Especially because the end of the book is not our favorite because it kind of just dribbles away. The movie tries to make it not dribble away, but I'm not gonna lie, after this
Mhm.
scene, I was like, there's like one part which I love, but the rest of it, I'm like, and that's the end.
It's hard to get that energy back. And yeah, to
Hmm.
have that level of, again, I think it's catharsis. Like that's kind of the climax of the movie, like definitely an emotional climax of the movie.
Hmm.
And then the kind of denouement of all of that just feels kind of like, that falling action. It fails to kind of grasp you in the same way.
Yes, absolutely. And um yeah, because again, I like in the book, I don't really care about Colonel Brandon in this movie. I think Alan Rickman does a great job acting, but it's not his fault that I don't care about him, right? I don't care about him because in the story I'm not pulled towards him, right? Um, and
Mm.
Marianne, she gets sick. Colonel Brandon's like helping her. They're traveling. Um, but the parts I do care about at the end are anytime Emma Thompson's on screen. And part of that is because she's so excellent, but also we finally get Eleanor expressing emotion.
Yeah, it's again her presence just being in many ways the most dynamic one in the film, which I think is especially amazing when you think about just how much her character is sense, right? Her character is the one that's measured and in self-control, like she's much less demonstrative than the other characters, yet she arguably carry the movie. I mean, they're all helping, like they're all carrying it, but I bet
Yeah.
her, she's carrying the most weight.
Hmm. I agree. Um, when Edward shows up and proposes to Eleanor and Eleanor like begins to hyperventilate, I think that is also a great portrayal of her getting into that sensibility. And I love that we see it essentially through Margaret's point of view almost. I think, they're spying. We're looking in on them. It's still private, but we still see the emotions of it. I really enjoy that.
Me too. Yeah, once again, Margaret's kind of being the kind of figure of the audience member in some ways. Like she's kind of the relatable one. She has a lot of the same questions we do. She's curious about the same things we're curious about. And again, they're using that character in a really effective way.
Yeah. And then we have the letdown. Oh, wow, they're getting married. And that's it. Like, there's no, again, here we don't have a wrap up of Marianne's emotional arc.
Yeah, it's just like boom, double wedding.
Yeah, classic Austen, double wedding.
Yeah, it is classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a question for you. I I don't know if you know this. I'm just curious if you do. So at the wedding scene, they're throwing coins.
Hmm.
Is that like because I have know about throwing rice, and I don't think I've ever learned about the throwing coins. Do you know if that was like a Regency thing or just like the filmmakers thought it was cool? You know, I was like, I didn't look it up. I meant to, but I was like, maybe Spencer knows. I don't know.
That is it is really strange. I'm not sure about that. I'm doing a quick Google search just to see if that's enlightening. Apparently, there's a British tradition where, sorry, scrolling down to the useful part. It looks like in the British section, coin throwing is not so much of a thing. There's like putting a coin in your shoe for good luck and throwing change. Okay. In Scotland and some parts of Northern England, there's an act of throwing small change onto the ground on the way to the wedding venue. So it sounds like there's a rabbit hole of coin traditions that one could go down,
Yes.
but I'm not really sure if there's a Regency specific one. There didn't seem to be one on that I
Yeah.
was able to find with a cursory Google search.
Yeah, because I've never heard of throwing coins like rice, and I was thinking maybe they chose coins for the movie because rice is hard to see on screen, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, coins
Maybe,
catch the light.
yeah, and maybe I know Ang Lee uses a lot of his like Chinese heritage influencing all of his movies. Obviously, this one less
Mm.
so. But maybe it has something to do with that. I'm not sure. I just thought it was interesting, and I was like, why coins? Why throwing? Would that hurt? That's a waste of money if you lose them. They didn't have a lot of money then. You know what I mean? I have all these questions about these coins.
I mean, symbolically, the like throwing of coins, signaling the rise in wealth status
Hmm.
for especially
Hmm.
Marianne. But I guess Edward won't have a lot, but it they are moving into a place of relative financial security.
Yeah.
Um, so, maybe there's something to that, like, oh, look, we're throwing around money because we are, not in a position of having to worry about money.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Maybe. Interesting. Um, Before we kind of talk about the validity of an adaptation in this case. Here's some other fun facts about the movie. Emma Thompson, like I mentioned earlier, had won an Oscar for acting in Howard's End. Then for this movie, she won an Oscar for screenwriting, and she was the first person to win an Oscar for both acting and screenwriting, which I thought that was pretty cool. Director Ang Lee never read Austen before directing this. He only read the script because Emma Thompson's name was on it and she had just won an Oscar when he had gotten the
Yeah.
script. And halfway through, he was hooked and he talks in the behind the scenes clips you can find on YouTube that like you would find on a DVD kind of extra information. He
Mhm.
talks about how Regency, like this Jane Austen version of Regency marriage and class was very similar to 20th century Chinese culture. And so he identified a lot with a lot of the themes and the characters in the script, which is also why he chose to do this because he felt, so
Mm.
seen by that, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Apparently, the horses had a lot of flatulence, so much so that they had to take out fart noises and editing because they just
Oh,
kind of have to.
no.
They just wouldn't stop making noises, and the mics were picking them up, and they're like, "We're just gonna have to get it out in post." And I thought that was really funny.
Again, like impressed with the acting, like to stay in
Yeah,
character with what's going on. Like,
yeah,
well
yeah.
done.
So the crux of the podcast, here's the main question: is this a good adaptation in your point of view?
I think it's a great adaptation for all the reasons that you enumerated. Yeah, it's one of those. I think that it really gets at the essence of the characters and what Austen is doing, the way she's exploring these dynamics, um, and putting them onto the screen in a way that feels relatable and accessible to a modern audience. I feel like that's always the challenge with these often kind of opaque seeming novels of the 19th century. It's like, how do we like make this engaging? How do we make this feel relevant and a kind of allure of being kind of historical. And I think that it does that, in my opinion.
I agree totally. I think this is one of the better Austen adaptations, both in a content wise. I think it doesn't skip anything that I'm like, oh no, they didn't have this scene. Like, I don't feel that at all. But also in a medium context, I think the changes it makes are necessary to make it interesting and new and but also still grounded in Austen. And I think they did a really, really good job with it.
I dearly love it, and I dearly loved it watching it again. And
Hmm.
as we talked about, I really think it is right at the top of my list of adaptations, of Austen adaptations as well. 10 out of 10.
I agree. It's a solid movie, and Emma Thompson on my TV anytime is a good time. I love her.
Mhm.
I watched Hallmark's 2024 adaptation of Sense and Sensibility. It was a made-for-TV movie. I found it at my library, and I was very curious because they, you know, in a post-Bridgerton world, it's interesting to see we can see adaptations and TV shows and movies be made with non-white actors, and it's interesting to see why people do those, right? Because in Bridgerton, it's very like, and this is not the first time it's been criticized. Like in the Regency era, obviously Black people and people of color were obviously in England for many different reasons. The big reason was that they were enslaved and brought there unwillingly, right? And then eventually they
Mhm.
were able to be there and have a full life without being enslaved. But in Bridgerton, they kind of erase slavery from history, which for Bridgerton, it's a romance. They're not trying to make big, deep thematical things, right? But Sense and Sensibility is interesting concerning the plot, right? Because the plot is about people being evicted and down on their luck and figuring out how to get on with life. And so I was really curious that Hallmark, a production company that's known for not making deep pieces of media. I love a Hallmark movie,
Mhm.
but I'm not going there to like learn about life? And so I was curious what they're gonna do. And first off, all the Dashwood actresses, fantastic. They did a great job.
Mhm.
But then as soon as we meet John's wife, John is white. And so the Dashwood's dad was white, but their mom is black. And so with John being white, I was like, okay, is Fanny going to be white? Because then that means this white couple is kicking out their family members who are not white. And I was like, that is a big statement in this world,
Mhm.
in both
Yep.
Regency world, but also in our world of 2024. So I was very curious. But Fanny ended up
Mhm.
being of mixed race, and so it seemed less racially charged. And then I was curious if they were going to only make um, Willoughby uh, be black, because then it has some other context of like the kind of the rake or the scoundrel character. I was curious, but both Willoughby and Colonel Brandon were played by black actors, whereas Edward Ferrars was a white actor. So like they kind of went in the way of Bridgerton, where they're like, hey, we're just casting people as far as acting. We're gonna take any context of race and political stuff out of it, which checks out for Hallmark. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
But I'm also glad they knew not to push that button, because I don't think they would have done any justice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. To make that kind of commitment, like there has to be some like follow through and thinking through about how that context changes things.
Hmm.
Um, and to not do that at all, especially in, a more kind of serious examination of like how, financial politics happen within families, it would seem
Mm-hmm.
kind of like they hadn't done their research and hadn't
Mm-hmm.
really done their due diligence to like see
Yes,
how the interracial dynamics would change those things. Um,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
I was like very worried and then interested and then kind of relieved that they went the way they went. The costumes are wild. They are beautiful, but they're bright and it's definitely like, hey, Bridgerton was crazy, so we're gonna do that too. Which honestly, I want to
Yeah.
wear a pretty dress. I get it. But if you're looking for historical accuracy
Yeah.
for costumes, don't look there. The actor who plays Colonel Brandon is extremely hot and very well acted and very reserved. I loved him. Him and Marion actually had tension, which I loved. Um, and
Was he older or was he
he's still older, but
okay?
the acting was there. Like they had some sort of like friendliness before Willoughby disrupts them. Like there's more
Yeah.
grounds, which I liked. When Marianne falls, when Willoughby comes and rescues her, it's the cheesiest scene ever. When it was very obvious that they're like, "Hey, you can't get hurt. We can't afford that. Also, we can't afford to have a stunt double. So therefore, just gently fall, please." Like it's very obvious that
Mhm.
they were doing that, which it's not the actress's fault. I blame Hallmark, and I'm fine doing that. The actress who plays Anne is so annoying. She does great. Lucy Steele is gorgeous and devious in this one. She is like sinister,
Mhm.
and I kind of love the take
Yeah.
with them. Oh, we see Colonel Brandon and Marianne kiss before they get married. It's very fun. And it's like well deserved, and it actually has like, you know, within the plot. But overall, it was very rushed, and the script was very poorly written. They weren't trying to make it modern, but it's very obvious that some random people in California were trying to write British writing and have never read a Jane Austen book before.
Like, not to dismiss the challenges of like adapting Austen, but her dialogue, I think there's a reason why like a lot of people who are new to reading 19th century fiction like Austen, like the dialogue
Mhm.
itself is pretty, like you can just take the dialogue and like
Yes.
snippets of the dialogue. You don't have to go to great lengths to like change the way they're talking.
Hmm. Exactly. So I would say if you like adaptations and specifically Austen adaptations, I say watch it. It's a quick hour and 20 minutes of your time. And there's some good acting in it, very bad script. So, but again, the acting is so good, I can tell that they're just trying to do their best, you know?
Yeah, they just
Yeah.
deserved a better script and a better funding for the
Execution. Yeah.
production.
Yeah. It was a fun time to watch it. It was interesting. We talked briefly. There's the Hillary and Haley Duff Material Girls is an adaptation, and I haven't seen that in years, but I remember loving it growing up when it came out. So if you like a more modern adaptation, that one's out there. I did not get a chance to watch it or rewatch it in the last couple of weeks. I haven't watched it probably in over 15 years, but that's okay. Which miniseries is the one that's more fresh on your mind?
It's not super, n none of them are very fresh, but there's one, I believe it was 2008. Does that sound right?
Hmm.
Didn't do
Hmm.
my prep work for this. Okay, yes, it was the BBC 2008 Sense and Sensibility. And the most memorable part of this for me was the actor that plays Edward is Dan Stevens, who plays Matthew Crawley in Downton Abbey. And I was and am a huge Downton Abbey fan, and Matthew Crawley was my like celebrity crush of most of my high school years. So I was very excited to see that he was in that he was playing Edward. And this just speaks to like the mindset I was in at the time. The scene I remember the most is there's a scene where he's cutting wood. It's totally just like this meant to be this like swoon worthy like look at this hot guy scene, which like isn't even really supposed to be how we see Edward, but like he's got like his shirt is unbuttoned. It's supposed to be kind of like the Mr.
And it is.
Darcy coming
And the lake scene.
out of the
Yeah.
lake at Pemberley. They were totally trying to do a version of that. And
Oh yeah.
I'm kind of ashamed to say that that is the main thing I remember from that miniseries.
I Now that you say that, I do have a memory of that scene.
Okay. See, it's a powerful scene.
It is. He's a great actor.
Yeah. And those eyes. Mm.
And then another adaptation that I've not watched again, I've only seen it once, but it was Sense and Sensibility, as in
Yes.
Cents, which I know that you've also seen it, which is a modern adaptation about candle making sisters. And it's a fever dream of a movie.
It is.
And, maybe
Yeah.
in the future, maybe we'll do a little fun, quick episode of that one because it's kind of one of those movies that it's so bad I want to watch again.
I kind of want to watch it again. I kind of want to subject Connell to it. I think he would be delighted by the zaniness of it, and I would love to continue our conversation.
Yes. And now I'm like, I wish I knew what they named the candles because I'm sure the candles had puns. And I probably watched it, I don't know, right when it came out. It was probably like on TV one night and Jody and I watched it, but Lordy, that movie.
Why candles? That's my question. Like, besides the obvious pun, it's like I wonder why the world of candles felt like the way to explore the characters of
Yeah.
Sense and Sensibility.
I want to know the exec who greenlit the idea. And was it the pun that came first or the script that came first? You know?
These are good questions and questions we should follow up on later.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. Um, but yeah, those are, just some Sense and Sensibility adaptations. And of course, there is the Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters, which I've actually never read that one. I read the Pride
Me
and Prejudice and
neither.
Zombies, which I had a fun time when that came out, but I've not
Mm.
read the Sea Monster one. But I remember the cover because it's like one of the girls' heads, but it's a big like octopus kraken.
Oh, always happy to talk about Austen and Sense and Sensibility. And I mean, my mind is just stuck on our candle making adaptation. I think we do need to
I
return
I
to this at some point.
I think we do too. I think that will be a great you know, a great watch to calm down after yelling at middle schoolers all day.
Yes, a total change of pace. We can breathe in the sense, the sense
And the
of
sensibility.
Thank
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Spencer, for joining me. It was a blast.
you so much. I had a great time.
Thank you, listeners, for listening. Make sure you're following us on Instagram at Read the Book First Podcast. I'm posting stuff about books and movies, and also I'm making a cool post about Emma Thompson because I'm obsessed with her now. Make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss an episode. Check out our Patreon linked below. Rate us 5 stars. If it's not 5 stars, don't worry about it. And remember, read the book first.